We continue with the Amidah prayer on page 5. Open up my lips, O God, and I will sing your praise. We are the old people, we are the new people. We are the same people, stronger than ever. You bless us, Elohei Sarah, you bless us, Elohei Rivka, you bless us, Elohei Rachel, you bless us, Elohei Leah. You bless us, Elohei Abraham, you bless us, Elohei Yitzchak. You bless us, Elohei Yaakov, you bless us, Elohei Yisrael. And now I'm going to ask you to go back to page 4, and we are going to recite those selections that accompany the taking out of the Torah and the reading of the Torah on Rosh Hashanah. And I will share with you the reading, which is the binding of Isaac. But before we do that, we turn to God and we ask for forgiveness. Today is a day of forgiveness. We not only direct our attention to God, but to one another and to ourselves. And we ask our loved ones and our friends, our neighbors, our fellow residents, for forgiveness if we have slighted them or upset them in any kind of way. This is a good time to express our desire for forgiveness. Now, I realize it's difficult to do that given the fact that we don't see one another in person, but perhaps in our hearts we can bring to our mind individuals that we have slighted and ask for forgiveness silently in our minds, or pick up the telephone and express our desire for forgiveness via the telephone. And then this is also a day on which we ask for forgiveness for ourselves. Very often we are very strict and harsh on ourselves. We judge ourselves too severely. We don't give ourselves enough credit. We don't recognize our own humanity and our own weaknesses and failings. After all, we are mere mortals. We cannot be perfect. Perfection belongs to God. And we are convinced that God will forgive our imperfections, our shortcomings. If God can forgive us, then certainly we can forgive ourselves. And so I ask you on this Rosh Hashanah to be kind not only to your neighbor but to yourself, and not inflict upon yourself unnecessary judgment and unnecessary criticism. As we expect to be tender and caring to others, so I invite you to be tender and caring to yourselves. You'll find the Torah service on page 4, in the middle of the page. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech Apayim, V'Rav Chesed V'Emet, Noser Chesed לא אלפים נושא עוון בפשע וחטאה ונקי. Yud Hey Vav Hey. Those are the letters of the Tetragrammaton, the inscription of God's name in the ancient world. We turn to God as the source of compassion and tenderness, patience, forbearance, kindness, awareness, bearing love from age to age, lifting guilt and mistakes, and making us free. And now I invite you to join me in chanting the Shema and the verses following the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol, Adonenu Kadosh Shemo. Gadolul Adonai iti unromma Shemo Yachdav. As I indicated, the Torah reading for this morning is the very stirring and very complex story and narrative of the binding of Isaac. The story is straightforward. It's not difficult to understand what has transpired. The events are pretty clear in this narrative. The challenge of this narrative is to understand its meaning, because on the surface it suggests that God commands Abraham, his chosen one, to sacrifice Isaac, Abraham's loving and only son, who was supposed to carry on the tradition and inheritance of Abraham in terms of the belief in one God and the tradition of Abraham and Israel. How could a God command a human being to sacrifice, to take the life of one's child? It makes no sense. How are we to understand this? It contradicts everything that God stands for. Yes, in the ancient world, and we know in other civilizations of the past, there were human offerings, there was human sacrifice. But from the beginning of the Torah, the Jewish people have held to the highest value the meaning of life, the preservation of life, the cultivation of life. How could a God of life command death? Moreover, the death of a son, of a child. And so this is very problematic. And our rabbis debated and discussed this story over and over again, trying to understand its meaning. So let me read to you the story, and then we will discuss briefly some of the possible meanings of this text. After these things, this is in Genesis chapter 21, verse 1. After these things, God tested Abraham, saying to him, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. And God said, Take your son, your only son, the one you love, Isaac, and go forth to the land of Moriah. Offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I will show you. Abraham rose early, saddled his donkey, chopped wood for the burnt offering, took Isaac his son and his 2 lads, and set out for the place that God had spoken of to him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Abraham said to his servant lads, Stay here with the donkey. The lad and I will go yonder. We will worship and return to you. Abraham then took the wood for the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. In his own hand he held the firestone and the knife, and the 2 of them went on together. Isaac then said to Abraham his father, Father. He answered, Here I am, my son. And Isaac said, Here is the firestone and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham replied, God will see to the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the 2 of them went on together. They came to the place that God had shown him. There Abraham built the altar and arranged the wood and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. Abraham now reached out and took his knife to slay his son. But out of heaven an angel of Adonai called to him, saying, Abraham, Abraham. And he replied, Here I am. The angel then said, Do not lay your hand on the lad. Do nothing to him, for now I know that you are one who fears God, as you did not withhold your son, your only one, from me. Abraham lifted his eyes. He now could see a ram just after it was caught by the horns in a thicket. Abraham went and took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering in place of his son. Abraham named the place Adonai Yireh. To this day, people say, on the mount of Adonai, God will be seen. This is the story. And so the meaning seems to suggest that God had no intention of allowing Abraham to go through with this horrendous act of slaying one's child. But God was merely testing him to see if Abraham would have the courage and the commitment to God above all other commitments and connections, even so far as to take his very own son, because God commanded him to do that. Some people claim that this story is a subtle way of denouncing human sacrifice, to showing Israel that we are not to do what other ancient nations did when they worshiped their gods. It is a way of prohibiting human sacrifice. And there's a third opinion, which is very interesting, which holds Abraham at fault. Because if you listen to the story carefully, Abraham says absolutely nothing in protest. Now, Abraham is not the kind of person to remain quiet in the face of injustice. On the contrary, in the situation of Sodom and Gomorrah, where God wanted to destroy the entire community, if we remember, Abraham stands up before God and pleads on behalf of the community, claiming that perhaps there are a certain number of righteous people, and you, God of righteousness, would not want to destroy people who are innocent as you carry out your punishment against evil. Why didn't Abraham protest this situation? After all, it was his own son. It would have been only natural for him to cry out to God and say, God, how can you do this? How can you not only command me, but allow me to do this? And so some commentators are harshly critical of Abraham because of his silence in the face of this kind of command. Whatever the explanation, we are challenged to understand our relationship to life and to God at all times. And if we pay attention to the very end of the story, we will recall that Abraham discovered a ram caught in the thicket and made use of the ram as a burnt offering in place of his son. Animal sacrifices were regarded in the ancient world as legitimate. But even today, in our contemporary society, there are those who feel that not only is human life valuable, but animal life as well. And they express their criticism of this form of worship, but it was one that was determined by the ancient world, and it could not have been understood as a way other than bringing an animal upon the altar as the legitimate means of sacrifice. And so, as a concession to the Jewish people, we too sacrificed animals in the ancient world. Today, of course, we substitute this kind of sacrifice with words of prayer, words that come from the heart as a way of praising God and connecting to the divine. And that ram, each time we sound the shofar, which is made of a ram's horn, we remember, by association, we remember we remember that stirring and dramatic event of the binding of Isaac. And in the same way that God, through the auspices of an angel, withdrew the knife or halted the knife from going further from the hand of Abraham and taking the life of his child, so we hope and pray that God will spare us any experiences of pain and difficulty and harm and injury in the course of the new year. Before I attempt to sound the shofar, which is the most important mitzvah of the day, the most important commandment of the day, we read on page 6, the top of the page. I ask you to take your prayer books again, or your prayer sheets, and we turn to page 6, and we read the top of the page. Actually, I'm going to sing it, I'm going to chant it, because it is a special addition to the prayer service on the High Holy Days, on Rosh Hashanah. Zachreinu lechayim, melech chafetz b'chayim, v'katvenu b'sefer hachayim, lemancha Elohim Chayim. Remember us unto life, sovereign who delights in life, and inscribe us in the book of life, that your will may prevail, O God of life. And we recite the following selections before the sounding of the shofar. From the straits I called upon God. God answered me with expansiveness. From the deep I call to you, and you will answer. Blessed are you, Adonai, Spirit of all that is, that has sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us to hear the sounds of the shofar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kiyemanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Blessed are you, Adonai, Spirit of all that is, who has kept us alive and has sustained us and has brought us to this moment. I take the shofar. I cannot announce the sounds of the shofar because I will be blowing it. Usually you have another person announcing the notes, and then the person who blows the shofar sounds those notes. Essentially, there are three kinds of notes. There's a tekiah, which is one sustained sound, and then there is shvarim, which are three shorter sounds coming from the Hebrew word shabor, which means to break, or they are broken sounds or broken notes. And then truah, which are a minimum of 9 very short, very brief notes that sound almost as if one is wailing. It's a staccato sound. And our commentators have pointed out that each of these sounds suggests a mood or a state of mind. Tkiya brings to mind a statement of certainty. It is forceful. It is strong. There are times in life when we feel, and we should feel, confident and strong. But then there are times when things don't quite unfold the way we would like them to. And there is brokenness, shvarim. The note is broken into three sounds. And sadly and tragically, there are moments when life becomes almost unbearable, and we reach the point of great sadness and loss. And in those moments we wail, we sound the sounds of teruah. We feel as if we have so little strength left to carry on. But we never end on shvarim or teruah. We never end the sounding of the shofar with the sounds which are broken and express our tears and wailing. We end with the tkiya and the tkiya gdolah. We end on the note of confidence, and we end with a feeling of certainty and faith, not only for now, but for the future. When we attempt to sound the tkiya gdolah, the extended tkiya, the extended sound, which if I have enough energy, I will be able to perform for you. When we sound that sound, we in a sense try to commit ourselves to an ongoing future of strength and commitment. We look towards life with a sense of optimism and hope. And now I will attempt to sound the shofar as best as I possibly can. Tkiya. Tkiya gdolah. Well, I managed to get through those sounds, so I feel a little more relieved now. I wasn't quite sure whether I would succeed in getting the full complement of sounds out of this shofar. Okay, now we'll take another one.